Hey, this is Ross Payton with Role Playing Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 165, the importance of gear in RPGs. Yeah, we're doing just honest titles now, just so you know what we're going to be talking about in this episode.
Lame.
Yeah.
Go back to the bad puns.
Bad puns aren't good SEO. That's the problem. And we're all about, that's when you think
You
about
sold out, Peyton.
I have
You went
sold out.
Hollywood.
Yeah. If only I didn't even get to
Buy my
Hollywood.
book?
Yeah. I'm at like direct to DVD territory. I'm like at the asylum. Like,
Transmorphers.
yeah. If I got the license to do the Transmorphers RPG, I would not do it.
That should be what we do. Yeah. We should make shitty knockoff
Just ask the
RPGs.
Aaron's soul will melt. It'll be amazing.
Yeah. No, actually, only
Dragon and basements.
dragon in basements. Overgrown lizard in basements. Yeah.
Yep.
So, anyways, in this episode, we're going to be talking about items in RPGs, good implementations of it, bad implementations, what is an item, how important it is to player characters, and all kinds of fun stuff. But first off, we do have a bit of news. Caleb, it's here. It's finally happening. It's happening.
Party Foul exists in the world. It's at game stores. People are playing it. It's crazy. Yeah.
I'm buying it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people want to buy the game that they missed the Kickstarter, where should they buy it?
You can get it at tabletopdirect.com, or you could get it off our website, partyfoulthegame.com, which will redirect you to Tabletop Direct, but URL will get you there either way. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
All at it, or at a fine game store.
Yeah.
So.
And if you go to one of any number of cons this year, Caleb may be there to
Desperately hawk it to you.
That includes Origins, Gen Con, and Moon City Con here in Springfield. So I'll be at Origins too. It should be a lot of fun. And Spencer will be at Origins. Actually, he'll be at all three of those cons too. So
Yeah.
When is Moon City Con again?
September. Yeah.
September.
Yeah. And Origins is in June, and of course Gen Con is in August. So yay!
I'll be the one screaming, "Please! It's about ducks, please!"
that are drinking.
Yeah,
It's a win.
that's my pitch so far.
Yeah.
Just wailing.
Yeah. It's a bold strategy.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that hasn't been tried at Gen Con
Yeah.
so far is just outright wailing. Actually, if you could bring live ducks in there, like trained ducks.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
People like ducks. The actual animal. Anyways, I'll be going to Australia next month, or actually in 2 weeks from this recording. And I've recording a bunch of episodes ahead of time, and they'll be all scheduled out, so you won't miss anything on the podcast, but I won't be in America. I'll be in Australia, and I'll be on vacation. It'll be great.
Yeah.
What if I bring a duck and then I only give him a treat if you buy a copy of the game? Okay. And so I'm like, well, you didn't buy a copy, so
So this is
poor
like,
quackers.
Did you
Look at him; he's so hungry.
Have
this
you
is
seen,
like
have you seen The Wire season 2?
Yeah.
where that dude brings that duck into the bar? Like,
Yeah,
apparently ducks. I don't know. I mean, it's fiction, so it's probably completely worthless as far as knowledge goes. But that duck lasted a while, taking shots at the bar. So
Yeah.
you could try. You could try and get the duck drunk.
Yeah.
it's not going to be animal abuse. It'll be like a pee or something quackers will enjoy.
Yeah.
The animal abuse will be you not buying the game.
You're just
It's
like-
on you.
Yeah.
Not me.
or Mr. Quacker.
Yeah, our Mr. Quackers.
He's the victim in
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, be sure to look for Mr. Quackers at Gen Con. Now cue us trying to figure out a duck costume. Yep. It's just fucking LARPing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially. Anyways, we should talk about games and items in them, because what got me thinking about this idea for an episode was actually listening to both of you talk about an upcoming Red Markets book. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Sean Ferris and Matt Campen made a gear supplement for Red Markets, which is the very first thing people asked for, and they ask for it to this day. And I had absolutely no desire to do it whatsoever, because I find it to be the least interesting part of almost any game, including my own. And they did it, and they did it really super well, in that, there's a bunch of, gun fondly stuff in it that people want and that you could build your entire character concept around. But then if you try and do anything else, they will bleed you out entirely of your funds because they're very specialized goods. And they're calling it the Veblen Goods catalog, which is, like Ferrari kind of stuff. So it's really cool. And we're playtesting it now. Jason is...
Yeah, I am currently running 2 campaigns actually testing this particular supplement. And I'm also on one of them testing the hopefully potential first Red Markets expansion rule set that will add mass combat and more rules to the game.
Awesome.
Yeah, that game is called Red Markets Meets DayZ. The YouTube links are being currently posted onto the Facebook page. So yeah, go give Phil Monday some love because
I will have some links in the show notes too. So.
Yeah. And then the other one I'm doing hopefully for Tabletop Tales, if the recordings come out good. First game, a little rough on our recordings. We'll see. But yeah, I've got a almost entirely female taker crew, that I've managed to peruse together. Yeah, we've been getting to play with all the new toys that these gentlemen came up with, and can confirm chainsaws are absolutely awful. So well done on trying to make that balance. So not everyone is running around trying to live their,
Evil Dead.
Evil Dead, Dead Rights. Is that that video game where
Doom.
Yeah.
It's just everywhere.
Yeah, no, like the chainsaw rules are actually really good as far as making it the most obnoxious and stupid thing you could possibly carry. But if you do, it does have some baller stuff. Like it adds intimidation checks, though only when used in combat. So
you're that guy.
Yeah, you are that guy. But yeah, no, it breaks your strength. It breaks your haul rating. It breaks your refresh rate. It just breaks everything about your character, as Caleb said. Like you will absolutely pay for carrying this stupid thing around.
So yeah, I like it. I like that it's those specialized kind of stuff. But like, I'll be completely honest. Had Sean and Matt not done it already and been like, "Hey, you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah." I would have never done it because I have a gear aesthetic as is playing in Red Markets already. So yeah, I guess we could talk about that if you want to, but
well, I mean, just overall, the importance of items in video games really varies quite a bit. Certainly in a lot of the more traditional ones, obviously D&D, first and foremost, items are extremely important. They're part of your character, and who they are because, certain magic items can make or break a character concept, at least in, if you're really going into like, I need to optimize my character, he needs to be able to, this little, character needs to be able to do this kind of amount of damage per round or whatever else. Or it gives me this kind of versatility or this kind of utility. And then of course you have other games where items are almost non-existent or are parts of your or just simply signifiers of your personality. So, in Fate, a gun is just, the thing is now it lets you make attacks with the shoot skill instead of the fist skill, or the unarmed skill. So there's a lot of different treatments in games.
Unless you have an aspect called the shooting fist.
Yeah.
In which case, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
You can punch
You had to
people
use one of your stunts for
over
that.
the horizon.
Yeah.
You had to use your stunt for that. So,
what was that? Robot Jocks? They had one of those.
I don't know.
I mean, Robot Jacks did have shooting fist. That's actually in a lot of giant robot animes. Actually, Robot Jacks was live action. But anyways, yeah, so it's kind of, and there's also good and bad implementation. So like what makes a good, clearly you want item rules that I think enhance a game and make a game more fun. And certainly there is that sort of like, for players, it is that kind of, I have the cool thing now. I can do coolest thing. And, that's kind of satisfying. It's part of the escapist joy of RPGs is like, I can finally afford, or I finally found this awesome item. Now I can just totally wail on enemies or do whatever. And so there is value in that and, being able to find fun in that. So, there are video game genres that are based on loot, like
most of them.
Yeah.
Outside the indie space, almost all video games are entirely based around loot nowadays.
I was thinking puzzle games really aren't, but
except for those guys who are, streaming Tetris, like Ninja's Tetris, stream.
I mean, Tetris 99 streams are getting to be very popular.
Okay, yes. Yes, Ross, I'm aware you've found every deep, dark corner of the internet to
I was
find
referring to
counterexample.
Diablo and those kind of
okay,
examples, which are so based on like thousands of items spawning and filtering through them.
Well, here's what I find interesting with modern video games. Yeah, there is so much focus on loot. So you look at the modern battle royale, it all depends on like what guns you can find and stuff like that. But the other stuff, even the hero shooters, are now based around loot, even though loot has no effect on the gameplay because now it's those damn loot boxes.
Yeah.
Which is what I find really interesting is that like they're literally just paying lip service to the idea of capitalism and Skinner boxes and acquiring things because it's nothing but conspicuous consumptions. It's nothing but a digital skin. It does nothing to actually affect your gameplay. They're really just like, mea culpas, like bowing to Moloch there for like, yes, we have a catalog of things. It has no effect on the gameplay or story. Also, if it's like Anthem or Destiny, we don't have a story, but we've got many different things that you can have.
Yeah.
But you can't have all the things, just some of them. And that gives them value, right? Loot box. Like, and so, that would be the darker side of this that I see sometimes. But I view it as a continuum. Like, there's pure narrativist, because, like, what are we doing in RPGs besides just sitting around and playing pretend? And we were all kids, like, playing with Nerf guns. Just like, no, I have an invisible shield given to me by, where you just
Calvin Ball.
Yeah, Calvin Ball, which is a lot of indie RPG storytelling. Are your personality overcomes all obstacles. Or that kind of stuff. And it's very much about, like, wish fulfillment and empowerment. And then on the other side is just, like, shopping simulator. Like, I don't like Robotech or D&D or
Robotech is not so much, but yeah, definitely D&D
or Mech Warrior or whatever. Like I have a mech that fits inside this other mech that will shoot out when my first mech dies, and it has these guns and they have this much ammo, and I count every bullet, and like that's the other side of it. It's like, well, Calvin Ball on the one side, and then this Phoenix Command bullshit on the other side, and you got to land somewhere in the middle there. I think you go too far in one, because if you don't acknowledge the importance of stuff, that sort of limits the number of stories you can tell. It sort of has to be an iconic narrative, like, because Batman can have stuff, but Batman's still going to be awesome without stuff. Like, if Batman has a paperclip, he's going to find a way to defeat the villain with it. Like, and it's all about the force of personality overcoming all. And that's an iconic narrative, all right? But like other more adult forms of narrative involve the reality of material existence, even if that's drastically different in whatever setting you have. And it's about scarcity and the fact that power is not absolute, and the stakes are higher, So I think you need that, but then you go too far in that. It's not about narrative at all anymore. It's about shopping. And then we've already done episodes about like the capitalist assumptions of like, all swords of this type are the same gold price, even in your feudal barter system or whatever it is. If you go too far on that end, it's not very fun, because the problem with that is that while it does lead to a more, in my view, mature storytelling ability, so much of it doesn't occur at the table. Like, you're doing homework at home to shop out your gear, or you're doing like...
Yeah, but some people do find that fun.
Some people do.
Yeah.
And those people find it fun by themselves, away from the table of other people who you're supposed to be having fun with. It's sort of like the antithesis of the social aspect, because you don't all sit there and shop together, or at least most groups don't. And if you do, that's fine. But so I was just, it's really about striking that equilibrium, I suppose. And so like, people who are just like, oh, I want every brand of gun possible in red markets, and let's make it 400 page longer, because we're going to need, every type of manufacturer, or like we're going to make up fictional gun manufacturers like Shadowrun and have them put out entire seasonal lines. Like, I don't see that making anything interesting at the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jason, you also wanted to talk a little bit about narratives, as we're kind of on that, right? And items,
and kind of to go along with that from a very very different kind of perspective because, you know, if anybody's going to be the gun porn guy at the RPPR table, it's me. Like, you know, growing up pretty heavily involved in the pro Second Amendment community, and then, you know, actually being in the military and going to war. Like, I kind of understand, you know, some inherent like traits as far as this stuff and kind of where differentiation like kind of matters, and like, and also like kind of some of the aspects of what it can say about personality in the same way, you know, people might judge cars or, you know, clothing brands, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, like, you know, I'd be the guy that, you know, that wants to sit and like write out a list. But then a couple of years ago, you had me review Phoenix Command for After Hours. And yeah, looking at that, it's like, you know, this is fascinating. And I do kind of understand some of the inherentness to it, but like it literally would take a half hour just to
figure out one
character. And then, actually start, you know, delving into combat mechanics and, you know, having now finally gotten to start running some RPGs and actually seeing like what's necessary to keep a narrative flow going. Yeah, no, that's nonsense. But
Phoenix Command would be great if I was trying to do like a ballistic recreation of one gunfight. Like if there were no characters, but like, all right, you're going to be controlling Doc. We're going to do the OK Corral, but we're going to track where every bullet lands.
Let's recreate it.
This is our campaign. We're going to be here for 12 sessions of this one gunfight.
Yeah.
That would be it. And if you found that fun, maybe that's the system for you. But like, your character doesn't need a name in this scenario. You are Shooter B or whatever. Yeah.
And like I said, I would do it once. You know, I could sit down and do that for like a month, you know, worth of gameplay sessions, and after that, like I'd never want to do it again.
Yeah,
because I know that I would have burned up all goodwill I have with my friend and peer group, you know, as far as like getting to do a game, and now I need to shut the fuck up and let them run all their games and never ever mention this that we did this again. But that being said, like you know, when we do run games, you know, particular Delta Green, because Delta Green's loot system is, you know, we discussed before the podcast, a pretty effective one because it allows to kind of give differentiations that actually have real weight to the character. And as Ross put it, just give you more opportunities to get into trouble.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, by the default rules, like in Delta Green, you have to make essentially bureaucracy checks to acquire certain things or give up points of your character's personal bonds as you dump your life saving to get, you know, to illegally modify your AK, you know, for full auto or something like that in a machine shop, and find a drop site for it, you know, so no one can find it or tie it to you. Know?
But I think you bring up a good point in that good gear is characterizing.
Yeah. So there's the techno noir aspect of like, you know, the
Tom Clancy,
the Tom Clancy thing, the real world aspect of like what these represent, and that extrapolates even further. You know, the further we move away from contemporary settings like Red Markets and Delta Green, you know, and I think that's where there is some benefit to D&Ds, though obviously I've only played a campaign of D&D, and like I definitely get the criticism that you guys tend to level at it and why I haven't played it since. Because I'll
be actually trying to run some more D&D later this year, so we'll do some more, you know, one shots or two shots of it, so you can broaden your horizon in that regard. Because but that's another discussion. So
sure. But yeah, like there is an aspect of, you know, what it can say about the character and the narrative, and as long as people can kind of understand what you're getting across, your verisimilitude, your specificity is fine if it allows you to engage better with the story, as long as it doesn't impinge on the GM and the other players getting to get involved. And that's tend to where I get. So I'll quip something, you know, realistic. And, you know, I sometimes have noticed you kind of like squinting at me like, what? And I'll quickly like clarify what the hell I'm talking about. And then I'll move on, and I won't try and like power game of like, well, no, like this handgun is, you know, significantly more ballistically satisfactory, so I should get a little buff here. Now, like, because that's not, you know, that's not gameplay efficient. That's game breaking. And what it says to me about my character says a lot more for me to engage than what it needs to say as far as like affecting gameplay. I watched an older Extra Credits episode, for those familiar with that, where the hosts, I don't remember the other guy's name off the top of my head, go into the myth of the gun and discuss why first-person shooters are more prevalent in America. And like watching that and discussing the idea of like mythology and what that says, you know, in this case, weapon choice, and specifically discussing guns. But, you know, they get more into, you know, Japanese culture and, you know, Buddhism and Bushido and all that stuff. And spirituality is where their combat and their warrior mythology comes from, whereas ours is literally based in, the everyday man can pick up a gun and have a cause.
The American Revolution.
Yeah, exactly. The American Revolution, and, cutting out all the nasty aspects of Manifest Destiny, but like, the frontier nature and the frontier aspect, like
Sure.
a lot of that has stuck around, and that has, toxic elements to it, obviously. Like bullying makes right and stuff like that. But it also does say a lot about us versus, the need for caste and, extreme training that the Japanese mythology tends to say. But the point being, all this is like, yeah, these things do reflect this stuff, and it gives a lot to that backbone of that character. So having that, I think, is engaging, if nothing else for the individual character's sake, for the player's sake, to, be able to pull themselves into this world that, is only exists in the spoken word from a GM and 3 or 4 or 5 other people around a table.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where basically I come in as far as like where I think how I'll define like a good system. So, that's what tends to engage me the most, is that ability of balance of, specificity and verisimilitude.
Yeah. I think we're all kind of agreed on that there should humans are tool using creatures, and we place a great deal of importance to our tools in both our real lives and in our narratives. And so the most satisfying stories to us have that kind of captured the idea, the importance of, hey, tools, they're useful. We need them. But you can obviously get bogged down in the details. Oh yeah. And you can get to the point where, like, if they're just the same game mechanics wise as your shoes or your clothes, then there's no weight to it.
I will say one thing that I appreciate about Phoenix Command, if I recall correctly, is because it gets all gun porny like that, but it also does an insane level of detail for damage. Like,
yes,
when you finally figure out when the bullet hits, it's like, well, there goes your duodenum, and you're like, what's that? It's like, I don't know, but it says here on the random roll table that it's gone, and you don't play anymore because you've been shot, because that's how bullets work.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, when people argue for this, like, really simulationist gear aesthetic, they rarely argue for it in any kind of symmetrical way. Like, I've never seen, like, gun porny guys who complain about, like, a certain type of heavy pistol not being the type they wanted from the net one edition to Shadowrun of the next. That doesn't explain what kind of it doesn't tell you every individual nano opiate and quantum bandage in the healing kit. It's still just a box with a cross on it that says, rub this on wound, make good. And, like, no one argues, like, well, what type of bandages? What kind of sterilizing tools do they have? How are there different scalpels? Do I have a stent? Is there a clamp? Like, no one talks about, what if they have to go on a ventilator? What if they, no one gives a shit about that. And it's because
there's no paramedic rules.
There's no paramedics rule. But you know what? If I was talking to a paramedic, they have as much, if not more, like, technical shit. Like, same thing if you're, like, want to be a hacker. Like, the first edition of Cliff's Phase rules for hacking were too complicated, and they're having to simplify that. And yet they're so abstracted as to what actual hacking is that it's nothing. But, like, everyone complains because they don't know. They can't get, a drum barrel for their plasma rifle. Like,
yeah.
And so that's the thing. I really think a good gear system is symmetrical in the way it treats simulation across the board. So, like, I look at something like Apocalypse World with the tag system, which is something I tried to steal for red markets, in that, like, I want a blade. All right, I have a blade, so I can do blade stuff. But I want my blade to be nasty because that's my primary character. So you just write nasty in italics next to it, and it has this, like, super basic, easy to remember mechanical function, and you're done. And that's kind of what I want.
Range close, range far.
Yeah. And that's enough for me to characterize stuff, and that's what I have with the qualities and the effects and the upgrades in red markets, I think. But, like, the other thing is it needs to tell the story you kind of want to tell. So the gear in red markets is designed to make you both rely on it entirely and also hate it. Like, when you run out of fucking charges, you're supposed to be, I hate this fucking gun. And, like, you should, because you have to shoot stuff and it's not fun. Like, you got to shoot people and they're shooting at you, and that's awful. Like, you should resent and loathe it at the same time you entirely depend on it. And that everything in red markets is supposed to do that. It's supposed to be super effective for an insane cost. So, like, that's why the price is not the price. It's the constant price. That's why, and people are like, well, my gun has this many bullets and I'm going to count every individual one. I'm like, no, because you want to do that. That's why it has 10 charges.
Yeah.
Because I want you to not like the thing. I want you to resent the thing. Because it keeps you from being human. And the other people who don't want to even count the 10 upkeep, I'm like, yeah, you should hate it too. Like, it's stuff you need to live. Like, this is not a fun existence.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my gear setting. You should tell the story you want to tell. But if you're going to go for any level of simulationist, the thing you go simulation on is going to put in stark relief the thing you didn't go into simulation on, which is always really telling for what your game's about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
A couple of things. The thing I actually most appreciate about the red markets rules is actually that you have item maintenance costs, which no other game really does, or very few games do. And that's kind of the reality of, owning things, is that you have to keep paying for it because shit breaks or shit needs things. They need batteries or whatever to work.
And people complain about that. Like, it's like a knife doesn't have an upkeep. Like, it's like, I'm like, well, it does. It's like, well, I don't fuel my knife. I'm like, yeah, but like, you got to sharpen it, and that's time, and that's money. Like,
and especially on that, like, most people don't know how to sharpen their own knife.
Yeah,
like they just take it somewhere and get it done.
Yeah, and then the thing is like, people will be like, yeah, well, just like a couple days went between this job and the other day, but I had to pay upkeep. I'm like, yeah, because it's a game system, man. It's abstracting.
Yeah,
like, and I don't want everyone out there who's a gun buddy out there like covered in knives because they have zero upkeep. Like you're supposed to resent your damn knife. It's a thing. Like, knives are not fun to use when you need to use them. If you're not like cutting baling wire or something.
Yeah.
One
thing I did just realize as we were talking, obviously the importance of items varies by genre. And, we mentioned the Tom Clancy techno thriller. And I realized that there's sort of this, Luddo narrative, dissonance, between the genre, that D&D we think it's supposed to emulate and what it actually is. And we think it's, the Arthurian, the Lord, Excalibur, Lord of the Rings, the One Ring kind of type of that's what we think the magic items are supposed to be. But in D&D, what they really are gadgets in a techno thriller. And that's why you're loaded down with them, because you need these gloves that boost your strength, these boots that make you faster, this armor that makes you stronger or tougher, and you need a bandolier of potions and scrolls and all this other shit, because you need to be a jack of all trades, because your GM is going to throw you're going to be thrown into a hell cube with 3-dimensional puzzles and monsters and things to get through, and so you need a lot of different tools to solve these problems.
But to me, that those plus items are so lame compared to like the deck of many things or bags of holding, or items that like create stories around them. The sword you have to feed with blood or it starts making you go insane is way more interesting than the sword that gives you +4.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
5th Ed, I think, is going away from that, trying to make them more storytelling based. But I think even, in the heydays of Pathfinder and 3 Ed, where you would have like a list of 30 items, for a mid-level character, because you just stack up on everything. So you'd have tons of utility items. It's closer. D&D is more like you're a Night's Black Agents character in a fantasy world. And actually, when I was thinking about it, Night's Black Agents, actually also items are really important in that, but they're very narrative, because you certainly used a lot of items in our Tribes of Tokyo campaign.
Yeah.
And that's a game actually you need to play, Jason, because that's one where your gun knowledge would work into it, because if you can describe what your gun is, then you would get a bonus.
Techno thriller monologue. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the thing, that the narrative doesn't work unless you can describe it and make it part of the scene. Like, so you can get stuff in Night's Black Agents, but it's a matter of spending like contacts, and it's like a very easy to do. You could, and I could have easily just said I want gun, but like once you have the thing, you're not counting bullets individually. You're just describing what you can do with the thing. But if you want the extra actual narrative bonus aside from being able to do it, you have to do the techno thriller monologue, which will give you a bonus on refresh because you're describing your gun in a cool spy way. You can do the same thing for driving tests. You can describe how cool your driving was. I know stuff about judo, so I made my character do judo so I could like use the actual Japanese names of stuff and just get points for unarmed combat, like, and it made like cooler scenes, you know, and that's cool, but it's not really the stuff. It's just using the stuff to tell a story about a world in which like you need things to do things.
And I think that might be a little esoteric, but like, yeah, you know, I think that's definitely a good way for like people who do enjoy that type of thing.
Yeah, it's a dissociated mechanic, certainly. But but that's my argument. You're always dissociating something.
Yeah.
What are you dissociating and why?
Yeah.
Because it's going to have to be abstracted somewhere, or it's Phoenix Command.
Exactly.
And but for the grace of God, go I.
But I mean, like Night's Black Agents would be a game where, like, if you spend a point of human terrain or whatever, be like, oh, well, that guy's not maintaining his gun well, so he's obviously he's using very expensive equipment, but he doesn't know how to use it. So this tells you something about that person's character. So you can gain something from that, for example, because. Again, especially in some genres, especially sort of like in the military and the Westerns, one like how you use your equipment and how well you take care of it says something about your character, you know?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but all the stuff in Night's Black Agents turns into a burn notice voiceover, which is cool. Like that's a storytelling thing. Yeah, it's not just a thing that's on the mental screen. Yeah.
So we should probably talk about like some of the good implementations and bad implementations. Okay. So I'll go first because let's get bad out of the way first. Okay. You know, and I think the best example for that is going to be Caleb's already laughing a little bit. Rifts, because it has huge amounts of items in the core book and all the supplements, and these items are poorly differentiated at best, and sometimes not at all. Like there's just like rows of plasma guns with near identical stats, different names, and it's clearly padding for the book. You know, if you can do 30 line drawings of plasma and light laser rifles, and just like, oh, this one does 66 damage and costs 30,000 credits. This one does 46 damage, but you can do a 3 burst thing and 3 round burst on it, and it costs 34,000.
By the way, shout out to Chris and Patsy, who are both fantastic artists. Chris has done all the maps for all the Red Market stuff and a bunch of art in the book, and Patsy is constantly doing stuff for RPPR, but they both slogged through the line drawings of the inventory items, and I know that is not a fun day at the old drafting table.
I do like the item. Yeah, the item art in Red Markets is pretty fun.
I love it. They did a great job, but like they also did like 200 of them.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, it's like, oh God, no. I'm like, I'm sorry, we're almost there.
Yeah.
Just weeping, drafting at the table.
Also, like on more important items like power armor and robot suits, it's just like stats you don't need. Like you don't need to know the MDC of its left wing, you know, or its foot or whatever, because everyone just attacks the main body MDC, you know, when you're dealing damage. And every time it says, oh, black market costs 54 million credits, and then of course there's, you know, no way player characters start with like 5,000 credits. So like outside of GM Fiat, there's no way player characters could ever afford these items unless they steal them. And so there's just hundreds of these power armor and robot suits in these games that cost more than player characters could ever get normally, except through GM Fiat. And
I mean, I'll be honest, I really want to do like some sort of mech warrior game, but like I can't think of a way to do it that's not just gear
have you looked at
porning.
Lancer yet?
I haven't looked at Lancer yet.
So Lancer is from the team that does Kill 6 Billion Demons. So same art, same incredibly beautiful art, but it's set in a post-scarcity future where you have 3D printers. So if your mech gets damaged, you can just go back to a forge and have it printed a new one in a week. So your items, instead of items, you have licenses. There are these corporations or these that design new mechs, and if your pilot gets enough experience or somehow is worthy to get a new license, you can now print out this new mech. So if you want to transport to a new world, you just, you know, go through the jump game, then have them print you a new mech. And it's, there's a full game of it. There's a pre-release version available as a PDF, but it's like, I love that idea of just like, my mech's blown up, I'll just print a new one.
Yeah. I mean, but like, my understanding, and I know it's limited, I'm not saying Ava or any of the big robot animes. My understanding is that like the point of them is that they can be customizable and cool. I know that's what I loved about games like Armored Core and stuff. And like, but when you go down that road, it becomes gun porn shoppy. Like, I think my left one should have micro missiles, but my right shoulder should have a 50 caliber.
So I'm going to bring up a
machine gun.
concept that you mentioned. There. Have you heard the term blue booking in RPGs?
No.
Blue booking was first described in a Champion supplement back in the 80s.
That makes sense.
But it describes short gaming sessions that do not involve the entire group, but which instead focus on the actions of one or a few characters. So, like, this is someone like this is the shopping spree. You do this in between main games with maybe you and just the GM or you and another player, but it can also involve role playing things. And so, the idea is, you can customize your mech in between game sessions, and so that's called blue booking.
Yeah.
And so now you know. But yeah, in Lancer, of course, you can customize your mech. You can, you have so many weapon mounts, and you can do that kind of thing. And again, customizing and optimizing a mech for battle is, some players really like it. It's kind of
the combat system would have to be so cool, and I don't.
I
think
definitely want to
most
try
combat
out
systems
Lancer.
are cool, including the one I designed. So.
Do you have any experience with the mech RPGs or games?
Actually, I don't think it was a.
I was just saying, Jason. I was asking James.
I'd have to go dig it up. I still have the rule book for it, but it is one of the Mech Warrior. It's not Robotech, not Robotech.
BattleTech?
BattleTech, yeah. It's not BattleTech. It's actually Mech Warrior. So it's after they kind of made that transition with the video games and the novelizations. I had that. That was my first experience actually GMing, was trying to run those games in like middle school.
I mean, those are more like war games than anything else like that.
Well, mostly they are. This is actually an RPG though. Yeah. This is a straight up RPG. So it's more about being a pilot, and then like it's got very down and dirty mech combat rules. Because it has only maybe a dozen of the mechs with their kind of predetermined loadouts. So you don't get the gun pointing customization. So it's a lot more about, the trying to get into the interesting backstory of these story worlds and kind of the warrior.
It was back when the elemental clans were really big and everything. They're fighting them.
I think so. Yeah. So there's a lot of aspects to it, and I mean, a fairly crunchy system. What sticks out to me, has nothing to do with our topic, but it's religion system, and picking out religions for your character. And like Scientology has a big blurb in it. It's like there's no way Scientology stuck around into this hyper warrior culture universe. No, but it cracked me up a lot.
Yeah, I can't go to war. I have to go audit my fate.
Yeah, exactly.
I
have a little experience with that, and its combat system was very down and dirty as far as the mechs go. But I think the disappointment for us, because we were fans of the video game, was we wanted that. Like again,
you wanted to be able to customize your mechs.
We wanted the gun pointiness, and as Caleb said, looking at this now, like it would just be a royal mess. I would still probably do it just for that one moment of sheer glee of getting to correctly narrate just this one awesome battle. But I know that it would just be the biggest, like the notes that everyone would have to be taking as far as everything just sounds unbearable.
I'd want to do it because in the second Takeshi Kovacs book, it starts off when he's on the actual battlefield before he dies for the umpteenth million times. And it's the most gonzo over the top war description I've ever read, because it's future war. So it's this division was eaten by a nano plague and I had to shoot my captain because he wouldn't stay because he got syphilitic shrapnel. And it's just this insane, everything's biological techno murder. The ground itself is weaponized. It's carnivorous dirt and all sorts of crazy shit going on around you. And I'd be that'd be an utterly crazy thing to do a fighting game in. But you'd need a good combat system. And I do not want to do that simulation. It's crap for a large amount of time because it's really hard to design those combat systems, and I don't think I'm up to it, even if and maybe one day, but but that's the thing. I really think you need a narrative idea and then a gear system. I think you don't need a gear system then a game around it. And I think that happens sometimes.
Which I think if we're moving on to criticisms, I know we've already beat on Phoenix Command a bit, but having dug through it, that is exactly what it is. It has in the back of the rule book, it has a supplemental section for kind of building your shitty brush fire war proxy being fought by small special operations units against insurgents and whatnot, and all this nonsense. It even has a science fiction supplement.
Yeah, Living Steel.
Yeah.
Shane Ivey told me he played it back in the 80s. I'm like, what? You know? God, you poor man.
But yeah, I think that, and for me, the biggest thing with Phoenix Command, obviously, it would be slow and narratively unfulfilling unless that's exactly what you want to do. Is
Phoenix Command again. I think the person who designed it later moved on to NASA to work as a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
Like it's very designed for particular mindset.
Yeah. And this is, I do want to compliment the detail and time spent to actually be honest. Cause I mean, again, as someone who's actually seen what bullets actually do to human flesh, watching a Tarantino movie where someone gets shot with a shotgun and flies a mile away is just one of the most obnoxious things you've ever seen in your entire life. But there's escapism to it. Cause it's like, okay, well, at least it's not real. So I don't have to think about the real actions. And this game, it definitely allows that with its 269, I believe, hit locations and, its variety of rounds and their
we can take a break. I could go dig out my copy. We could go with,
Well, I mean, not to pick on guns. I mean, guns can defend themselves, but to use another example, Continuum. I believe that's how time travel actually works. That shit is standing out. Game's unplayable, completely unplayable nonsense. You cannot bring it to a table. But if time travel's gear, that's simulation as hell. But as a result, you can't get it to it. Or to use Phoenix Command, you take something a level back, but Twilight 2000, I've read up on the setting. It's pretty cool. The 20 seconds in the future, at least when it was written. And it's interesting. And you're doing all this geopolitical stuff. And it's just this side of tabletop Arma in terms of simulation. Yeah. But nobody played it because
during the 80s.
During the 80s it did, but nobody plays it now. Because it's how many bullets are left in my magazine?
We did a game of it on RPPR.
Yeah, you did it. It apparently took a very long time.
It took a long time because what broke down was figuring out machine gun bursts and
there it is.
How many bullets do I put to this guy and then this guy and then this guy? And do I have to spin an extra bullet to walk the gun from one to the next? And and he just, the GM, bless him, could not get the rate of fire rules right. We screwed it up.
Or not do what I would have done. Fuck it. Yeah, sure. Because what is the point of slowing down a gunfight, which should be a climactic moment in the narrative, to flip around through a manual?
So. And Phoenix Command has not just, obviously it has wind rules. Everyone's kind of infamously knows about the bullet
windage.
The wind and Coriolis effect stuff. But when you're using 40 millimeter grenade launchers, which it has two of, the com block and the NATO issue variants. Yeah, you have, rules for determining if the round, if the charge was good in the round. So does it, does it short? Does it long? Does it hit where you wanted? So you have to
do you
roll
calculate every individual piece of
shrapnel? You do that for
you do not do that. It does not go that far. But
you do that for pellets, shotgun pellets. I do know that.
You get this issue with that. And I think Ed to kind of wrap up, that as far as why it's not good, diving into the narrative focus of it. Phoenix Command has a near literal Jane's anthology of who's who of weaponry used by Comblock and NATO in 1982, including stuff that didn't technically actually end up working out. It has an H&KG-11 in there and statted out, and that gun doesn't work. It never worked, and it never will work. It's a cool thing that Hollywood uses for props now, and that dates it, and so that limits the narrative focus. So moving beyond the gun portiness of it, it is set in a distinct moment in the world, and that is where it's effective. And you could push it maybe 5 to 10 years one way or the other. But more or less, it is a product of exactly when it was made. And thus that limits how much narrative flexibility you have to it. We can talk about the mechanical rules all day. And honestly, you could steal it even if it would make your life a living hell. But as it is written with what it has, with what you're presented in your book and its loot system, yeah, it is. It's very much what happened if the Berlin Wall didn't come down.
Yeah.
Let's look at like the Cold War going hot. Let's look at brush fire wars. Let's look at all this type of stuff in the 1980s, and that's it. And so again, like for me, I like the verisimilitude of looking at this type of stuff and feeling like I'm in there, but I could only be somebody in the 1980s waging armed conflict, and like. Yeah, there's just not enough fun games you could tell, I feel. I mean, you get spy thrills and stuff are great from the 80s, like people that were still making money off making movies and set in that time frame.
Yeah.
But how many narratives can you write like based around just being some Navy SEALs fighting and, working alongside Contras and, South America or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely limited and thus it kills the narrative.
Continuing our 4th Grenada campaign.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
We've now recreated every actual battle in Grenada.
It's less the tedium for me, and it's more just like, it's right here of like, no, this is locked in, and thus you may tell this many stories, and that's it. And so, I think that's when the loot system fails, when it locks you to your one specific thing, and that's your story, and you have to keep retelling that story over and over again. It's like, well,
yeah. Actually, Night's Black Agent, it's not with the guns, but like they have the skill called human terrain, and that's like was very much a product of the Iraq War, where the U.S. Army is bringing in anthropologists to try and study the Iraqi people and try and figure this stuff out. They don't use that term anymore, so like that term's been disused for like 6 years at least, or something like that. Yeah. So that's kind of dating Night's Black Agent. But I mean, that's a good point. Like accuracy is important in your, if you're going super simulation, you better be accurate, know, because otherwise you're going to break the one thing you're trying to be good at. But it also talks about genre too, because one thing, we're talking about these super accurate, super simulations things in one particular way, like trying to emulate the real world. But there are other games that try and emulate specific genres in a very particular way. Like, I know you mentioned in our discussion before the show, Feng Shui.
Feng Shui too.
And honestly, that's the way to go, because that's story first.
Yeah.
Gear second.
Even though a lot about guns, you're not bothered by the fact you can keep shooting Feng Shui until you roll like a miss or something like that. Or like,
it has a great,
you don't count bullets.
It's got a great gun porny list. So it's nice for, again, like I can, like the lobby shooting spree in the Matrix is just one of the highlight moments of my childhood. And this is how sad of a human being I am, because that was the first time I really got to see a fantasy shootout with guns I liked. Yeah. And I was very happy and loved that sequence.
It's a great action scene.
No, I mean, it's a definitive thing, but like for me specifically, and ignoring the special effects, the ridiculous choreography, the fight training, everything that these people worked so hard on, I'm just like, damn, they picked something good there instead of just lame ass choices. Man, that makes me feel good. That's how Feng Shui 2 is. Like, their weapon descriptions are fucking asinine and insulting, like almost to a degree of making like rage, but they're accurate for genre. And like, and in that sense, there's this, just joy to it. And it's so simple. And again, as far as loot system goes, for the most part, you pick a character class or an archetype. I don't remember what the term they use. You get the things. And that's it. And every character is well accoutrement, and you can get more stuff. I remember, you can always. Well, one thing they have that sort of the thing I was referring to is the fact that like the reload, they don't you don't count bullets or shots or whatever. Right. You just keep firing until it's dramatically appropriate for you to be out of bullets. Yeah, and you pick up a new gun.
The person who can watch hard boiled like hospital shootout scene and be like, that's not. It's called a magazine, not a clip. Like that. That person's a psychopath. Like, they have like dead people in their basement, like cut into pieces. Like, that's not a human reaction to that kind of stuff. Like, you should I don't care if you actually know about the thing. Like, if you don't find it enjoyable, that's fine. But you're like, no, physics, that one, like, no one wants that guy. Like, no one wants to be the guy in Star Wars who's like, well, that laser sword would be infinite and cut into the atmosphere. But for some reason, for certain, like, topics, like, that's fucking acceptable in the RPG industry to be that, like, well, the $6 million man's shoulder better be cybernetic too, or it's going to rip him in half when he lifts that. Like, thanks for coming over, Tim. Like, we're all having a great time watching the fucking show now. Like, but it's like totally acceptable with certain stuff in the RPG area. And I really think that now that we've moved towards genre emulation, I am Detective Tequila. I don't aim so much as swing guns and they hurt people.
Like, who hurt you, Caleb?
I'm just, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong about this.
They can't hurt you anymore, Caleb. It's okay. You're safe now. I know. I agree. I really do think that but Feng Shui does have these mechanics that emulate that the hardball you can keep firing for a long time, or you just pick it and there's always a new gun to pick up. And
those shotguns in Hard Boiled have like 30 fucking slugs in them.
Yeah.
Like they should be running around with like drum clips or like backpacks feeding more.
But yeah, so I think that's a good implementation of item rules because they're appropriate to the genre, but because they're trying to emulate that type of action movie, not necessarily, definitely not reality.
Oh yeah. There's no simulation whatsoever, but it's very satisfying to someone who genuinely gets into it and knows enough to be able to recognize what.
And
they're
the same things like for like HEMA, like they're no one's trying. The thing is, very few people are like freaking out about D&D because it's not accurately like modeling Teutonic longsword techniques or something like that.
Versus scimitar fighting.
Like
D&D is its own thing at this point. Like it's its own genre. Like it doesn't emulate any other fantasy genre. It's its own thing. Look at this thing. It's not Lord of the Rings anymore.
But that's the thing. Like I think everything should be its own thing. And I think that's the sign of a good item list. So like it's very light, but I like the way most apocalypse games do items.
Yeah, you mentioned the tags.
Yeah, the tag system or Blades in the Dark is fine too for that end. And
Blades in the Dark is interesting too because it's not even just like tags. It's also like here's your menu of the items that you can possibly start out with, and that's it. Like, and so you're just limited to what can fit on that one little section of your character sheet.
And it's not endless shopping. There's no necessary blue booking, or if you want something else on top of that, it becomes part of the story. And you have to go get it together.
Spend downtime
doing it,
or craft it or whatever.
And that's interesting because it's all part of the narrative. And so, like, I honestly think we're really beyond this. I don't know, like. I'm looked down on by many in the indie community for having a gear list at all in Red Markets. Like, I am Phoenix Command to 95% of the people at the IGDN booth selling it with me. Like I'm Walter from The Big Lebowski to these people. Like I'm as the far right gun nut in IGDN as they're like, our story's about dreams, or your snakes building a home, like that kind. I'm like, all right, cool, but so I don't think this is as big as a problem, but it is left over from the 80s. And
I don't think it's a problem. I mean, because it's just like a difference of things. Because again, good gear rules, good item rules.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't see a lot of like bad gear rules coming out in the modern era. Do you guys? Like, I think even D&D's moving kind of away from it. I mean, Pathfinder's too much for me. Like, I'll be honest there. Like,
there are a lot of games that I haven't bought, but I'll like look at game stores and they do have a lot of like items, and like I feel they're creeping more towards the Rift side of the spectrum. So, certainly there's a lot of fantasy heartbreakers that still have a lot of magic items that I feel maybe are unnecessary. I don't know. I do. We Jason and I have been playing a lot of. We actually picked up Wrath and Glory, and we're continuing to play it. I think it does items well in it.
It's good, Caleb.
Is there a Harkonnen diaper?
I mean, we could make one.
Game's trash. Throw it in the bin.
But I mean, you mentioned the tag system, and like they're taking advantage of that, and I think that really helps because I think it leans a little bit right on the spectrum towards Rips,
heavier,
Phoenix Command, it and that's a little necessary for the setting because
it's appropriate for the setting.
It's this is a war game where like your individual like spec plastic details on these miniatures matter. And even when you have 30 or 40 of them on a table, so like anyone who jumps into this is probably going to want that, and this has that level of like. The table list is like, this long, and it's just like page after page after page. But, they have a pretty base set of how to roll, what it does, and then the tags, which allow it to be, all right, so this is how it affects stuff, because we have a very in-depth lore as far as how damage must be dealt, because everything is so genetically altered to deal and resist death. Like,
well, I mean, I feel like the one thing, the gear list isn't incredibly long. I mean, it's like 30 pages, but like it's again like it's a fairly thick book.
Yeah, who'd have a gear list that long?
But like the items that they have are all different. Like they're all very. I think like Rifts is bad in part because they have so many items that are basically nearly identical. Like there's no point of having them, but every item in Wrath and Glory is different. Like in the last session we played, it actually mattered because Tom's character, who's playing an orc psychic, actually was managed to one shot a monster. Well, not only because he rolled well, because of his one weapon was a anti-psych, was a force weapon, and the one orc weapon that is a force weapon, so it could do a lot more damage to the demon that he was fighting. So like that I feel like having a lot of items is fine as long as they're actually significant choices.
Redundancy is bad.
Yeah, redundancy is bad.
Because that's, having certain items is another way, especially if you don't have a game that has class systems, which is more and more prevalent as well. It's another way to achieve niche protection.
Yeah.
Like
how do you define your?
I'm the only one who can use the heavy rifle.
I mean, you were just mentioning it earlier with the Red Market's chainsaw thing. That you could be chainsaw guy, and that's your type. Yeah, now.
You're the idiot.
You're the idiot. Yeah. But you're not just an idiot. You're a chainsaw.
You're
idiot.
that guy we hired for that one session until he died.
Yeah. And that's like an interesting choice. So at least it's not redundant.
Yeah.
So I think Wrath and Glory is actually pretty good, and also the reload rules are good too, because like they're a little. You spin reloads essentially to gain a bonus on an attack, and you only have so many to go around. And if you crit fail, you lose. You lose a reload, so you can run out of ammo. But again, you're not counting shots.
Yeah.
So, in fact, if I was going to do anything, I would actually add a little more to Wrath and Glory rules in terms of the items, because one thing in Warhammer 40K is that you have items that are centuries or thousands of years old that are in service. These,
hero weapons.
Yeah, well, not just hero weapons. It's just like this bolter was served, with this Space Marine, then this Space Marine, then this Rogue Trader, and then this, and I mean, that's like Warhammer's trying to do this sort of pseudo medieval thing, and that was a big thing in the Middle Ages. Like this sword was in this service of this knight, and then this knight, and then
weapons.
And like that would be an interesting story angle to have. Like, oh, now I've got to protect this bolter, because if I'm going to be the asshole who loses the ancestral bolter,
where's real war there that way? Yeah. It's like, go give the captain the Winthrop Splunderbuss, and he's out there. The other guys have saws, and he's just like, it's a really powerful shotgun. This gun is super old.
Yeah, if the Blunderbuss could take out like a technical, like that would actually be worth it.
A funny anecdote.
Yeah.
We were helping construct a new roadway out of Iran to help feed trade into Afghanistan, and the he wasn't a sheikh or a tribal or anything like that. He's just a dude who was in charge of it. Yeah, he gave, as a side of respect and their intention to move forward for prosperity for Afghanistan with NATO assistance, he gave my lieutenant his single shot breech loaded shotgun that he carried in the Russo-Afghan war. It's completely decorated in gold rivets and stuff. It's just this gaudy thing. And he's like, I bestow upon you my grand weapon. I have killed many Russians with it.
One at a time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God.
Jesus, yeah. Now imagine if that shotgun was actually had really good combat stats.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
then everyone would want to be using that shotgun.
Yep.
Yeah, but only RPGs and like Bass Pro's gun show works like, weapons are like fine wine. The oldest is the best. Like, this is an artisanal musket. It'll do 800 mega damage compared to your paltry 9mm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and of course, in Base Raiders, items can be sort of personality traits, as in Fate, but like you can't stat them out as separate things, and like I find that kind of interesting, because I mean, part of Base Raiders is this whole superhero thing, and so like, what happens if someone else gets Green Lantern's ring or whatever, or what if someone figures out how to mass produce Green Lantern rings and starts selling them on the black market, so
post scarcity economy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the campaign.
Yeah.
Or it's about a corporation that owns corn, something like that.
Own corn.
Yeah.
All of it.
The one game I do want to bring up though, is sort of like, is this good or bad? Or kind of mix is Eclipse Phase, because Eclipse Phase First Edition does get a lot of flack, I feel, for its item stuff. Items.
It's a little extra.
It is a little extra. Because they also, I mean, they did separate price into just categories from like low, high to super expensive. And I felt that was good instead of having like 1,000 different price lists and then like trying to manage your credits and all that other stuff.
Right.
Because it also converts into a favor, in an anarchist commune. I mean, part of what Eclipse Phase is trying to be is like a techno thriller in, a nanotechnology future. So like you kind of do need a lot of cool spy gadgets because you can't just fade it, or
and it is very sci-fi a lot of the times. Like there are just guns, but then there's like microwave guns,
disassembling
nanoswarms and like different types of nanoswarms. And
like our last one shot, I had a gun that just changed into other guns.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that too. So that was with second edition. So I don't know if either of you had a chance to look at the second ed item.
I haven't had a chance yet.
Are there any hopes for what you would improve for second ed or in general?
Yeah, I mean the action economy gets a little clustered, especially with like when you have wired reflexes and like full auto thing. I know my triad guy was like dual wielding SMGs and like putting 2 magazines out of each gun downrange every turn or something ridiculous like that. Because, once we learned to write for them, we started I could learn to munchkin the system pretty bad. Nothing's as good as printing cheap drones and using them as kinetic kill weapons.
The crash. I do want to see how those crash damage tables work. Cause
that was my favorite thing I've ever realized freelancing is like, wait, couldn't I just build saucer drones and do like 200 damage at a shot? And they're like, yeah, shit. We should probably fix that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can't hear you. Printing saucer drones.
Jason, did you have a chance to look at them at all?
I did actually. Yeah, I did get to flip through the gear list when we were prepping for that one shot. And I mean, I have a very limited experience with first ed. I played one shot with you, and basically I just took a pre-gen and looked at my gear list and was like, oh gosh, this guy is like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando. Like, I'm cool with this, but this is pretty excessive, even for my standards. So flipping through the gear list and stuff. Yeah, I felt like it was pretty straightforward, especially coming from what I saw looking at, pre-gens and quick rule guides from the first ed. And just how thick it was into this, which is, much more streamlined. Here's a category. Here they are from like, like you said, like, going from, kind of scarcity model and like damage capabilities. And it's like, okay, this is fairly straightforward. Like I don't know the setting as well as you guys do, obviously, because you're all right for this and have been playing and played huge campaigns of it.
It was a slow burn.
But
we had it for like a year or two.
It was a year.
We even got the courage to
I got it when it first came out, and then I was too scared to run it for a year. And so I was like, fuck it. Let's just do it. Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah. Wasn't that campaign like you guys' campaign? That's
we did a couple one shots first,
like 23 episodes or something like that. So,
and we still were getting shit wrong in episode 23.
Yeah. No evil. Yeah, we were definitely don't listen to it for fidelity to the rules.
But yeah. So I think flipping through it was fairly straightforward. I just didn't, again, going back to kind of where my focus tends to lie as far as like, engaging with my character and kind of the verisimilitudes type stuff. I didn't know what, differentiation I'm seeing other than dice rolling and modifiers that I'm looking at. So, I mean, I felt fairly straightforward and easy to do.
I mean,
to some of the other aspects of character gen.
Yeah, I feel at the best. Not only does do good item rules help expand the genre, the type of narrative that you're wanting to tell through things like reload rules or the feng shui rules. But also items provide a way to help define parts of your character, and one thing about items is they let you sort of calibrate your character later on as your character gets more experience or gains more power in the setting. You can get better a better category of items, or if you feel like you're changing, like if you're like, my super badass character suffered a lot in battle. So now he's going to give up weapons and he's going to become like a utility character. So he's going to, carry non-combat things or the vice versa. I was a peaceful character, but then they pissed me off. So let's get that shotgun, or whatever.
That's been my negotiator.
Because items are extrinsic to your character. So it's a lot. In most RPGs, you don't have ways to like rebuild your character in the middle of a campaign.
Yeah.
Your skills are set, but like you can always get new items and sell your old ones, get new ones. So it allows people to like change their character in the middle of a game. So, and like, Batman without his items is a Batman, but it's a changed Batman. So like it tells a different kind of story and makes it more different kind of narrative. So yeah, I feel those are the things you should be looking for in item rules, but not the riffs. Here's 50 pages of robots that you can't buy ever. Here's shit about their manufacturer that doesn't matter because who cares? Here's
anything at all called a glitter boy.
Whoa.
Unironically.
Going after the glitter boys. Just shooting with both barrels.
Yeah. Sorry, I really slaughtered a sacred cow there.
All right, when we get back, we'll have shout outs and anecdotes. And we're back. I don't know what music I'm going to be using. It will probably...
We do.
It may be synthwave this time.
Ooh.
Yeah, what?
Will it be something that doesn't end in wave?
Does music like that exist?
There it is.
I'm confused and enraged. Actually, I did use symphonic metal in a recent Patreon episode.
This episode, though?
No.
Yeah, it's good.
It was okay. Shout outs. First off, speaking of zombies, since we've been talking about red markets, there's a really good series on Netflix that you all should watch called Kingdom.
Kingdom is so good.
Kingdom is quite good. It is medieval Korea, the Joseon period, apparently, right after, or a couple of years apparently after Japan invaded, and things are not going great in the imperial court, or not the imperial, but the royal court of the Korean kingdom, and because the king turns out to be a zombie, and then the zombies start spreading.
Best beginning to a zombie outbreak I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Such a fucked up vector for a zombie outbreak. So convoluted, so great. Also, vector outbreaks really suck when you have nothing but medieval Korean weapons.
Yeah,
is what I've learned. The
zombies are pretty interesting too. There's a couple of twists to them. I can't wait to see what happens in season 2 because there's twists and turns. And of course, there's still royal intrigue. It's very Game of Thrones kind of.
Yeah. It's like half spy thriller, half medieval battle thing, and then there's zombies in it. Yeah, it's great. I love it. Yep. If it doesn't get renewed, I'm going to be so sad. I really want another season of Kingdom now.
Yeah.
And the hats. Yeah. Ross, the hats.
The hats are actually...
The hat game is on point. It's like the royal wedding every day in medieval Korea.
I never thought there'd be anything in the universe that have better hats than Team Fortress 2, but we've arrived there. It's Kingdom. Those Korean hats.
What a time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have a Netflix series to talk about, apparently. So, Jason, what?
So I just finished up The Order, and stop me if you heard this before. It's kind of a YA, like magic school-esque story dealing with magic practitioners versus werewolves. Please don't be turned off by this, though. The trailer for it was pretty good, got me excited, and the trailer actually does not do a good job of actually revealing the story at all. So the actual kind of twists and turns and, some unusual takes on the genre, because my wife, this is her guilty pleasure. So I watch a lot of supernatural YA in my day-to-day life, because Renee, that's what Renee does. This one is definitely interesting. And, the cast it's a lot of pretty new young actors. They're okay. They're not, they're not bad. They're not great. Like, some of them have some great moments. Some of them have some wince moments, but the supporting cast includes Catherine Isabel and Max Martini. And if either of those names get you excited as they get me excited, then this is definitely something you need to sit and watch the 10 episodes of the initial run on.
This is more of like a Monster of the Week kind of show.
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
very Harry Potter was initially my read on it, but it's not because it's more.
Well, it's college age.
It's more,
right?
yeah, it's college age, and it's more of like a Secret Order thing. So
Yeah.
more skulls, but magic.
Okay.
And with a little, not in a bad way when I say this, a little bit of a Twilight-esque thing with like two kind of competing societies going against each other. But to get too much more into it, I think would spoil it personally because like, yeah, the trailer sells one thing where it's like, oh, there are a bunch of witches that hunt werewolves. That's not inherently what you actually get. And yeah, it's, I thought it was worth the ride. I enjoyed the 10 episode streak on that one. And
Nice.
again, Catherine Isabel, Ginger Snaps, if you like all those like kind of the great but very low grade werewolf movies, yeah, no, she's here. Awesome. Max Martini, he's the soldier in every movie ever of the last like 10 years. So yeah, if you know this guy, yeah, no, getting to see him show up and do something other than be a soldier. Oh yeah, no, gave me chills. Loved it.
Nice. Caleb.
Umbrella Academy's okay.
How did you describe it?
It's fine. It's the Wes Anderson X-Men. That's not the SNL joke, which is basically what the comic book is.
Yeah.
But they just string it out.
Have you read the comic too? I've
Read it.
Is it? I've heard that it's better than the comic.
No, they try and expand on some stuff that is really glossed over in the comic, and they also gloss over it too, but it becomes more artful, like artfully left out.
Yeah.
They add a couple characters. There's some Gonzo-ish, but the comic is way more Gonzo and insane because they have these flashbacks, and those would be expensive, so Netflix doesn't film those.
Right.
But it is very talky. But the thing is, all Netflix shows are talky. But it doesn't feel like padding in the Umbrella Academy because they're really not doing a whole lot of let's get up and go adventure. Like they're sad, broken wrecks of human beings. And so they just have, interpersonal drama, and it doesn't feel like bullshit to stop paying for more fight scenes. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay. Cool. Speaking of, I don't know, depressing things, or I don't know, overwrought dramas. Well, whatever. Devotion is a video game I played recently. I don't know if it was taken off Steam for a little bit. I don't know if it's still back on. I'll have to check. It's a Taiwanese video game. It's first person, but it is a a horror puzzle game where you're trapped in this apartment building in Taipei in like the 1980s, and you're following this family story between 3 different years, 1980, 1985, and 1986, and you're trying to find out what's happened to them. And of course, then you figure out who you are and what your relation is and all this other, stuff. And it's a beautiful game, incredible visuals, great soundtrack, and very spooky. And it gets into Taiwanese folklore and occultism and Taiwanese cults. Like they have their own fucked up cults there too. It's and new age medicine bullshit. That like really okay. That's it's. But it was taken off Steam recently because of a controversy where one of the artists left behind a meme that pokes fun at the Chinese premiere, comparing him to Winnie the Pooh, and that pissed off a lot of people in China, in the mainland. Yeah. So,
and to be clear, that's what Steam's gonna legislate.
No, the developers took it off themselves.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. So
still fuck Steam.
I mean, all right, that's fair. That's fair. They deserve a lot of stuff, but it wasn't their fault in this case.
All right.
In this specific instance. Anyways, it's a great game. If it's available to buy, I forgot to check, but it is highly. If you like horror, if you like Silent Hill, like this is definitely your jam. And speaking of horror, you and I both watched it, but maybe you want to talk about this Velvet Buzzsaw.
It's it's basically a Delta Green scenario if no agents ever showed up and you were just making fun of the art community.
Yeah.
Which I'm for.
Yeah.
They're deserving of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maddie, what told me it's a great horror movie because you don't feel bad about anyone who dies. Like everyone who gets killed totally deserved it.
Yeah.
Everyone there is selfish. I apparently read up on it. The director basically wanted to do. Yeah, have you heard of the movie The Player? It's a '90s movie about Hollywood and agents and that whole lifestyle. And
Is that the one based off of
it's got the Jacob's Ladder.
Fitzgerald's last unfinished novel?
Who's the guy who stars in Jacob's Ladder? Tim Robbins.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he stars in The Player too as an agent. And it's all about and so he wanted to do The Player, but for the art world, and also have them murdered by haunted paintings. That's in the trailer. That's not really a spoiler.
Yeah.
And I do also want to mention there's a documentary that makes a really great companion to it called The Blurred Lines, which is about the art world and how it's messed up. And guess what? It's all about the money and rich people ruining things.
Yep.
Because all the artists are now just making art for art shows and auction houses so they can get more money because rich people keep demanding it. And
It's an elaborate money laundering scheme.
I mean, they don't mention that in Blurred Lines, but there is a show on Amazon called The Great Beast That Is the Global Economy.
Yeah,
And the first
yeah.
episode is about money laundering. And they mention art in it, so it all works around.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your campaign, Red Markets, or where people can find that?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, we've got a YouTube channel, Bike Squadron Alpha, and that the links are put up on Fridays on the Red Markets Facebook group page. So you can get at it through that. As we said, we are testing. I'm going for a long play format for the war rules and mass combat rules Caleb has written. So instead of retirement goals, they have war goals to gain assets to utilize in the big large scale combat that they will eventually get to, while also testing the new gear and equipment. And then, the other game, I hope will make it to Tabletop Tales. We'll see how the recordings go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, the new gear rules, some of it I think is a bit redundant, I'll be honest, but I do definitely appreciate the work these two guys have put into writing this. And there's some really great additions to it. And a pretty good addition for it. And yet one more Aaron story to add to the Pantheon. They have added rules for an exosuit system, sort of like the
Called the Aaron.
It really
Is it
should
called
be.
the Aaron?
No, it's not.
I might as well, though.
Yeah.
A Rod.
I'm not talking the Marvel movie, but the actual Iron Man suits that the U.S. military has been experimenting with for about a decade. Oops.
They're more like the frames that they use in the Matrix, the third Matrix movie, right?
I'd say
I mean,
more
not as
live,
big,
die, live, die, repeat.
Okay.
The actually really
Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah. All you need is kill. It's got three titles. It's got three extra titles. Yeah. I'd say it's pretty close to that. So Aaron, of course, being Aaron, decided that he for once decided he wanted to play fighter. He wanted to be the fighter for the group. So he's there. He's heavy close in support. So he's running one of these. He's a scavenger running one of these suits with a flamethrower strapped to it. And
super effective against the undead.
well, he's also got
Spoiler alert, it's not.
he's also got body armor, and now he found he managed to scavenge himself a helmet in the first game. They
Just imagine him wearing a bucket on his head, like eyes drawn on it.
we'll get to this. They opted for the red herring job in our first game session rather than going with the actual big story stuff. So there is a community of crystal gazers, crystal energy type of cats.
New Agers, yeah.
New Agers hiding in this Wild West simulation town that is run by a bunch of failed actors. So they took their job and they're going to a solar energy. It's not solar energy, but it's a mirror farm utilizing the energy to fuel waste disposal. I stole that from the shitty Sahara movie.
Yeah.
They
What?
They got there pretty.
You cast aspersions on Sarah?
I genuinely like it, but it's trash, and I know
it's
how
absolute
trash it is. So they get to this they get to this farm, and first Aaron wants to make a stealth check in this exosuit.
Always a good start.
Which it strictly prohibits. So, but Aaron Aaron used his leftover pleat skills from the rain campaign, the Nagal ICT campaign. So I gave him a scavenge check, and he found an old sand rail and strapped bits of the siding off the sand rail to his suit, and slowly. A sand rail is an off-road racer, for those of you that don't know. It's not a dune buggy, it's not a race cart, somewhere in between. So he started scooting along the desert wearing this rusted, ostentatiously colored panels of aluminum off this car and made his stealth checks off of it. So he made it to the farm okay. And inside there was a bunch of detox who were having an ideological crisis over whether they should blow up the mirror farm or use it to murder more unbelievers. And so the players decided to try and play the group's, ideology against them. Smart move because they're outnumbered 3-1. It kind of worked, kind of didn't. So Aaron's like, okay, I want to make one more scavenge check to find a helmet. I was like, okay, sure. Give me the check. He's like, okay, I found it. I want to charge in and make an intimidation check and start screaming that I'm with the DHQS and they need to. So basically, he turned himself into an Ed 209 with his exosuit and just charges into these neo-primitives with this freaking suit and completely fails his check. And I was like, yeah, they don't care. They start shooting at you with bows and arrows and spears and shit. Yeah. So Aaron ends up in this close quarters fight with a flamethrower against a bunch of people chucking spears and shit at him.
Jesus.
And the exosuit I tell you what, it is expensive and it is ridiculously hard to maintain. But if your campaign will allow, if this one makes the final cut and GM decides the campaign that will allow it, it's a pretty fun tool. Aaron's having a good time with it, and it has a nice balance of costing Aaron a shit ton of his resources, but it's pretty usable. He managed to effectively survive that encounter to run back and save their Leighton, who got headshotted with it by a bow and arrow because I great succeeded on my first attack check against her. She hasn't played RPGs in years and wanted to get back into it. Oops. And I immediately shot her in the face. I was like, well, your Leighton just got shot in the head with a bow and arrow. Have fun dealing with the vector in your lines. And there's a new
every whine's about the leg damage until that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And then suddenly we don't want the random damage rules.
Yeah. But there's an upgrade for the medical kit that these guys have also provided. Speaking of other tools that aren't guns and aren't romanticized, they've added a defibrillation unit to the med kit, so you can actually save players without will points from a death roll. So Aaron managed to utilize all of the bonus rules. The exosuit gets to charge back and zap the Leighton back into life before she turned vector on them. I have good feelings about this campaign with them.
I'm looking forward to it too. I think, and you're recording these for RPPR tabletop.
I'd like to send them over to you for tabletop tales as long as the recordings aren't garbage.
Yeah.
Which again, Discord was not nice to us for our first game, so we'll see how the quality comes out.
Okay. Well, anyways, that has been RPPR episode 165. You can reach me on Twitter at Ross Payton and Caleb.
I'm at Hebanon G Cal.
And Jason, are you?
I don't have a Twitter. No.
Oh. All right,
I'm good.
Yeah, but you can. You're on the RPPR.
Whisper
Facebook.
his name to a pigeon.
Yep, I will.
Yeah.
It will find me.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening. If you have questions, comments, please don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes or your podcasting app of choice. And we appreciate any and all support. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/RPPR, where we put bonus podcasts up like Jason's review of Phoenix Command, which is a fun episode. And it was a lot of fun. We'll talk to you guys